Good evening, everyone, and welcome to one of our webinars for 2024. This is Sunshine State TESOL webinar series, and this is our webinar for February of this year. I am excited to welcome our presenters. They will tell us a little bit about themselves in a moment, but we have Viktoria and Christine joining us tonight, and they will tell us a little bit about an article that they published, and it is related to supporting emergent multilingual learners through translanguaging. We are looking forward to this presentation and to the great experiences that they will present to us. And I would like to encourage you all to share your experiences as well, and any stories that you might have yourself. But before I turn this over to Viktoria and Christine, I would like to tell you just a little bit about Sunshine State TESOL. We are the organization in the state of Florida. We are a non-profit association of professionals dedicated to advancing the quality of English language teaching and learning through professional development, research, standards, and advocacy. We are a committed group of TESOLers who are truly dedicated to our students and the field. I would like to encourage you to consider joining us, joining Sunshine State TESOL. If you're not a member already, there are great reasons to join our team. We share the latest in technology and pedagogy, and there are definitely a great series of presentations that you will be introduced to through newsletters and other communications you will receive when you become a member of Sunshine State TESOL. Again, if you're not a member already, consider that. And it is a very small fee of $25 a year. But you will gain a great deal of knowledge and connection with other TESOLers in the area of teaching English to speakers of other languages. We have people who are in this organization at various levels. So regardless if you're K-12, adult education, intensive English programs, or any of the other areas, you will be able to connect with people in your specific fields. When you join us, or even now, you can explore some of our social media platforms. We are very active, and I can share that I do look at all of our platforms regularly, and there is great information and also updates and news and so on and so forth. So these are ways you can also connect with SSTESOL. So I encourage you to check us out and also follow us on all of the social media platforms that we have. Once again, I would like to welcome our presenters, Christine and Viktoria. And I would, as I mentioned before, I would like to ask that they tell us just a little bit about themselves ahead of their presentation. So that way we maybe know a little bit about who they are, but also that will give us an idea of the background behind their work and so on and so forth. So welcome, Viktoria and Christine.
Good evening, everyone. Christine, I hope you can join me as well. So my name is Viktoria Korogodsky, and I am a lifelong English language learner. I can consider myself trilingual. I speak Russian and German as well. And I came to the US many, many years ago, and I became an ESL teacher. I taught English as a second language in New York State. I did it for 10 years. I was a certified K-12 ESL teacher. And here in Florida, I teach English for academic purposes at Florida Atlantic University. And currently, I'm pursuing my PhD program in curriculum and instruction with a focus on educational psychology. Christine.
Thank you, my esteemed colleagues. I am Christine Kassover, and joining you from South Florida. And my background is in multicultural linguistics. I work with a lot of college-age students and continuing ed for adults, and also students that are working on their either TOEFL or international students practicing for SAT. So I have a lot of different exposure on our higher end of the educational section. And I truly, and I forgot my other role, those are my side jobs. My main job is as a full-time tutor at our community college. And our community college has great demographics and of a lot of different students with their backgrounds from all over, primarily the Caribbean. And I really enjoy working with them and maintaining their voice throughout their papers. It's been very interesting. It's my studies. I'm a colleague of Viktoria's in a doctoral program for curriculum and instruction, and I've been really looking at asynchronous tutoring and the type of feedback that students are given regarding language and what is standard academic English, and how to perhaps do some tutor training in that area to let the voice and agency and empowerment kind of come through. So that's where I've started my journey, and who knows where that will go. And that kind of brought Viktoria and myself together as we explored this article this evening on translanguaging. And we're very excited to share with you this discussion, and hopefully have your participation as well. All right, and I'm going to, we introduced ourselves, but I'd like to kind of go backwards and say hello. So we are saying hello, and hopefully some of you can recognize some other languages. Are we saying hello to anybody in one of your
Bonjour.
languages?
Ciao. Привет. Hello. Tschüss. So welcome, everyone.
Excellent. And we started with the idea of the hellos because of the translanguaging, and thought if why not the saying of practice what you preach, and getting everybody a warm hello and welcome, perhaps in a language that is familiar. All right. We will be discussing an article this evening. Just wanted to make sure that we're not misrepresenting. It wasn't an article that Viktoria and I wrote. It's something that we've been using in our studies and looking at. So it is an article that we're just going to be discussing and sharing some of the success stories from the case study. We've been doing a lot of studies ourselves, and we'll be conducting a case study on the international graduate student experience at our university, and have been looking at the qualitative methodology, and this kind of caught our interest, and we wanted to share some of the findings with you, but then also learn from you what kind of what works, what has worked for you in your classrooms. Viktoria?
I would like to ask, other members of our discussion to introduce themselves and just give us a little more background, maybe quick, information about you, please.
Okay, I will go.
Please.
Yeah, my name is Han, and I'm currently a third-year PhD student at the University of Florida. So the topic, like translanguage, before my PhD program, I was a English teacher, English second language or foreign language teacher in China. So I used the translanguage a lot in my classrooms. So because we do need their mother language, Mandarin, to support the learning of English. Yeah, but I want to know more about like doing translanguaging in another context like the United States. So I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you. Welcome.
See, go ahead, Evelyn.
Hi, my name is Dr. Evelyn Daza. I work in New York State. I am an ENL coordinator in Long Beach schools on Long Island. And I've joined because I'm thinking of moving to Florida. And I just wanted to see what the TESOL, I'm part of New York State TESOL, but I'm wondering what Sunshine TESOL would be like. And I'm also interested in translanguaging. That's something I've brought to my staff. However, I find there's a fine line between translanguaging and using too much of the first language. And that's something I'm trying to work with my staff one-on-one.
Welcome, Dr. Daza.
Thank you.
Excellent. And I see we've got Maria joining us from the university in Ecuador. Welcome. And Carlos, you're a high school teacher in Manabi province in Ecuador. Okay, so we've got a major representation from Ecuador. Wonderful. Okay.
Beautiful.
Welcome. Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, everyone.
So we will be going over an article, as I mentioned, that Viktoria and I came across and really enjoyed, and it's been informed by some of the professors at our university as well. Our program talks a lot about the multilingual learners, some of our professors, and the article itself talks about, and since it seems like most of you are very familiar with the topic of translanguaging, it has a framework though from emotional scaffolding, which I think is a nice additional layer to focus on it, not just the practice and the methodology, but how it can be presented and support the emotional scaffolding of our students. And the article really addresses a very large gap in the research. There's not a lot of the emotional scaffolding emerged with the idea of the translanguaging, and this article was published in 2020, I believe. And so, yeah, so it's the relevancy is there. We know. We've kind of just in our brief introductions have talked about some of the challenges that come up. So I think it's a very timely topic to discuss. And we'll talk a little bit about the 2 case studies that were part of the research and some of the findings from that, and share some of the successes that came. And then we'll also talk about the implications of the findings for school districts that do have multilingual learners. And as Viktoria and I were planning and discussing this evening's presentation, it was amazing when we talk about how many, what schools don't have multilingual learners, almost to kind of think about that. But in particular, Florida, it's almost a given. And I'm sure joining from New York, you have the same influx. And Ecuador, be very curious as to your demographics? Do you have a lot of multilingual learners in your programs, Maria or Carlos? No. Okay. No. Well, we will get you prepared when they come. So you have a lot of Spanish speakers. Excellent. And even then we have a lot of perhaps different dialects as well. As I know sometimes, depending on the learners, with my students sometimes will have different dialects and talk about that amongst themselves as well. So hopefully we can find some application there. Oh, excellent. I love that. Quechua. I was in Bolivia not too long ago and had met some people that were sharing their language as well. We had some terms that we thought maybe we could start with just to get our discussion going. We're a small group, so please feel free to just kind of jump in as we're talking. And if anything kind of jumps to your mind or you have a question, please do so.
So when we talk about the terms, the three terms that stood out and then were frequently used in the articles were emotional scaffolding, multicultural ecology, which Christine and I enjoyed discussing as well, and translanguaging. So emotional scaffolding, we can talk about verbal and nonverbal emotional scaffolding. And these are teachers' practices that support students' emotional well-being. When we talk about nurturing learners' emotional well-being during language acquisition, that's what we talk about, right? So the multicultural ecology, it's the entire language practices of all the children in the classroom and all the visible materials that represent different languages in the school, in the text in the library. So this all belongs to that multicultural ecology. And Christine and I discussed two terms, code switching and translanguaging. And then maybe we can start a little discussion here and ask our participants to give us a little kind of excursus. How do you understand these terms and what do these terms mean for you? Anyone would like to jump in and then share some ideas? Translanguaging, code switching, translating. So what is this all about? Please.
So I would like to, first of all, English is not my native language, hence the foreign accent. So I learned English as an additional language. In this process, it's, I think, natural to mix the two languages together, and it's still happening today when I speak with my mother, who we use our native language most of the time together versus English, which is what I use with my two siblings who live here in the US most of the time. So you can hear us speaking our native language, but then we throw in words that are like English words, but have our native language characteristics in terms of grammar and so on. So it's kind of an interesting mix that it becomes more or less like our family language in a way, because it really is unique and funny at times, and we laugh at ourselves sometimes at how creative we get with a mix of the two languages.
So perfect. What we talked about while we were discussing these two terms is that code switching is more a linguistic term. right? So that it has been widely studied, and lots of dissertations were written about code switching. And this happens. We code switch during our communication. For example, when writing an email, you can code switch, right? So when you say that when you talk to your parents, you code switch as well. Where translanguaging is a pedagogical practice. So this is more like a process that we can use in our classrooms and allow that code switching and allow that translanguaging. And when we talk about translanguaging, we understand that meaning making, right, during our communication. For example, when I worked with my students and I had beginners, I would ask my advanced students to help me explain important concepts to the newcomers. Of course, before I asked my advanced students, I needed to make sure that they understand the concepts in English very well, so they could translate, use the translanguaging and explain the concept. So this is the translanguaging, in the way we understand it. Christine, any comments?
Yes, no, I think you explained it very well. I found myself today, my very limited Spanish, 3 years in high school. That was a while ago. I was tutoring a student today, and they were having difficulty using articles. And finally, I was just like, una ella, una señora, just to try to get them to understand how we have to put that article. And the light bulb went off. I mean, even though it was just a couple of words, but in trying to make them comfortable and understanding, and in that sense perhaps it was a code switch, but for me not really, because I don't speak Spanish. I don't even claim to. I have limited vocabulary, but use that as that bridge to fill in the gap a little bit,
To help with the meaning, to help with the understanding.
Definitely. And as you talk about we the case studies, some particular examples from there that we wanted to share with you. They followed two students, and I don't know if you want to talk about the first one, Viktoria. If you want to talk about Jessica, I'll talk about the second student.
Yes,
Or-
just to bring it in closer to Dr. Daza. So the study took place in New England, and then these two cases are from there, and there are two. They don't have so many ESL students, or we are using a different, the article is using a different term. The term is used here, emergent multilingual learners, right? EMLLs. So this is the term that is used in the article for learners with limited language proficiency. So in this particular school district, they have some, some EMLLs, and the two of the students, this study was done at an elementary school, and one of the way it started, there was a professional development, a series of professional development sessions organized by the author of this, one of the authors of this article, Michelle Back. And these professional development sessions were, organized to help teachers with emotional, to help teachers with emotional scaffolding for the students with limited language proficiency. So in this case study, a third grader, Jessica, a Korean student, got some help from a volunteer, from another author of this articles, co-author of this articles, and they were. Jessica was a complete newcomer to the country, to the class, and then the article talks about the change in her behavior when she got some help from a bilingual volunteer who helped Jessica participate in class activities, share her dream ideas with the class, construct the sentences in English with the help of the volunteer, and Jessica was able to participate in class life, and how much it affected her overall well-being, her demeanor, her presence in the classroom, how happy she was to become noticed by other students because she was able to communicate with the help of the translanguaging.
Excellent. Okay. The second study was very similar from an emotional scaffolding standpoint. This followed a little boy, a first grader, and his name was Shen, and he had some behavioral issues, or what were perceived as behavioral issues, and he hit a substitute teacher at one point, and as he was able to work with support staff that were able to communicate in his native language, he was able to understand more about the rules. And it wasn't that he was had behavioral issues, he just didn't understand. He was being a little boy and frustrated at that point. And so they took the translanguaging to help put together the rubrics, which I thought was something that definitely is beneficial for everybody. It's not that we're just catering to one crowd, it's catering to one student, as sometimes there's that fear, and we kind of talked a little bit about finding that balance. But in this case, being able to describe what the rules are and the behavior through translanguaging, there was a common understanding and a sense of comfort too. Here's what is what your expectations are. We can't be performing in the classroom if we don't know what it is we're supposed to be doing. So he had a lot of success in that, and went on to, in the case study, follow him through with his behavior with his peers, and he made he became more comfortable once he was able to understand what was going on in the classroom more, and the behavior, and start to socialize. And they had a presentation on what they did during their vacation over a spring break, or I think it was, or a winter break. And he talked about his trip to the museum. And what was beautiful was the students didn't even really care about the museum. They were fascinated with the characters and looking at the pinyin and the characters of his native language, and having that discussion. So it was something that made him very proud. Obviously, he enjoyed his dinosaurs, but it was more of a time to share more about himself. And then the children wanted to learn more about the language and his culture. So it had a beneficial effect, again, on socialization, which definitely helps with the emotional scaffolding. So from behavioral, he had his own expectations, but also opened doors for socialization. And at the beginning, when Viktoria mentioned about the ecosystem, and we kind of had our own vision. I really enjoyed the idea of an ecosystem. I don't really come across that terminology too much in my area of study when I'm looking at languages and multicultural pedagogy, or culturally sustaining pedagogy. But even when we think about culturally sustaining, that would apply to an ecosystem. So putting that concept in of sustainability, we kind of had this vision of our EMLL in the middle, and working around through the supports, the emotional scaffolding coming through our teacher or facilitator, the peers, that socialization, all forms of communication, and then any type of additional multilingual support, which we'll visit and talk about briefly. I do want to just circle back real quickly. We have been talking about the emergent multilingual learners, and that was that EMLL, and Amani had delivered a presentation last, this was probably like last fall, I believe, or the end of summer, on all of the different names and monikers that we have for our students. So if you're interested, we do have a library with Sunshine State TESOL on our YouTube channel of our professional development previous workshops, and I would recommend taking a peek there to see some of those.
Thank you, Christine. That's a great topic.
Excellent. Do you want to maybe touch, Viktoria, on the supports for the ecosystem?
I think we have it on our next slide. We
Okay.
can go. And then that you could see a little bit better who can we count on, who can be our helpers in advocating for our students. Of course, peers, and one of the terms that also came to my understanding lately is LAs, or learning assistants. So also can be helpful. Multilingual parents, family members, great opportunity to connect with families and involve families. Our multilingual co-workers, teachers, school aides, social workers. I can share an example when I worked in New York, and we have a very large Japanese population, and then we had to explain to the parents some concepts, some behavioral concepts, some rules at the playgrounds that we wanted to communicate with parents. For that, we brought a social worker, and who helped us also with translanguaging, explaining concepts to the parents, so then parents could bring it to their children and discuss it with their children. So we went through different avenues to kind of share the meaning, to share the concepts. We also talk about volunteers, college students, retirees that can help in and work with students, and especially we're talking about multilingual support.
Hey, you bring up a good point there, Viktoria, too, with talking with the parents. I know my involvement with PTAs it has been a lot, where bringing in translanguaging to communicate with our various parent population, and trying to get their involvement. And a lot of times it's just a matter of that communication. They didn't know what kind of events were happening, or if they felt welcome. So it does extend out of the classroom into some of those organizations.
Great.
And in the article, they reference a few other studies that have demonstrated the power of the translanguaging pedagogy, and give some scientific evidence through their findings. And it just helps to fortify this pedagogy. And we'll provide a copy of this article, and some if you're interested in the wealth of resources that inform the study. I think that you'll find some very good reading material there. We wanted to talk a little bit about what does this look like in the actual classroom. I know a lot of times we come to professional development workshops and talk about the theories, the findings, and the research. But we're looking for that one little nugget, something that we can kind of take back and start trying tomorrow or the next day. I know I get very excited when that happens. So Viktoria and I did just a little bit of brainstorming and put together some ideas, and we hope that you can share some things that maybe have happened, success stories in your classrooms. we started out, Victoria, with the emotional scaffolding strategies. I don't know if you had something specific you wanted to share on that, or just in general.
I can share, or unless we want to open it for a discussion first, if anyone wants to pitch in and then share some ideas. And so please welcome. All right, so then I guess I will go with emotional scaffolding. So why is emotional scaffolding necessary? So again, according to research, different emotions happen during in the academic setting. It could be positive emotions, the joy, hope, pride, and as well as negative emotions, anxiety, anger, shame, right? When our, EMLLs come in, so it's difficult for them to communicate their feelings. And if we look back at the case study, that little boy Shan hit a substitute teacher out of frustration. So there was that feeling of anger because he misunderstood the direction or whatever happened to this poor little boy. So emotional scaffolding, is proven to help the students, feel better, to help nurture their emotional, well-being, and as well as physical well-being in the classroom. So there are different strategies, and then the three strategies that stood out for me were, of course, creating supportive environment, right? So encouraging peer interaction, celebrating linguistic diversity. Remember how students were so interested in those, in different types of writing, how they started, looking at the student at from a different perspective, look at this cool language that this student can speak. So creating that supporting environment is absolutely necessary for the well-being of our EMLLs. Another important point is to acknowledge the emotional state, right? To acknowledge, to recognize that our students might experience frustration, that our students might experience anxiety, and then acknowledge this and validate these emotions, right? So this will normalize language challenges, and we can provide reassurance to the students that we understand how difficult it is for them to function in the classroom where everyone speaks a different language. And here is when translanguaging comes really handy, because this is our way to explain through volunteers, to explain to our students, to reassure our students, we understand how difficult it is for you to be here, and we are here to help you. And another strategy would be modeling coping strategies for our students, right? So some of the coping strategies that I have been using with my students is teaching them how to do deep breathing, right? And then you can do it in any languages you can show them, right? So, and also positive self-talk as well. So just to bring that positive psychology in the picture and help our students feel welcomed, feel that they belong. And Christine and I were discussing what is verbal emotional scaffolding and what is nonverbal emotional scaffolding. So for nonverbal emotional scaffolding, a hug, a smile, a handshake, depending on your student's age, just a gesture that will show the students that the student is welcomed in this environment, in this classroom. So this is a part of emotional scaffolding as well.
And from that, some practical ways of getting the emotional scaffolding of that welcome feeling. Some different ways can involve vocabulary. We are always presenting vocabulary. Doesn't matter what discipline we're in, whether we're learning a language or we're learning a new skill, a new field. And I think the opportunities of making it accessible are really endless, instead of if here's some words to memorize or to know. If you can develop games, gaming is a very friendly environment, a warm environment. Whether we translanguage vocabulary and have students do a match game and try to match with the different same word, different languages. Or I know I always take with my college students, one of the first days when we're talking together, the word chocolate. And we go around the room and we say, what's chocolate in your language? And they're always just amazed. And that starts that common bond, because chocolate is chocolate. It's just maybe a little bit different, but it's tried and true with all the languages. You'll have chocolat and chocolate, but it always the same. And I think that pulls them together. So when we can share and those when words that have the similar meanings and similar sounds really makes it a closer environment. Another activity that works well is with the names. Students love to, everyone likes to hear their name. So I make it a point to not just know your students' names, but how do they want it pronounced? And a lot of times I know my students will say, oh, it's okay. Yeah, you're close. Or just call me this, and they give me an Americanized name. And I'm like, no, I want to call, what does your mother call you? I want to know what your mom calls you. I said, I will correct your English all day long if you would like, but you need to correct my pronunciation of your name. That is your name, and that's how you say it. So, I'm very big on honoring the name. I try to incorporate it into assignments, whether they're reading stories about people and their names, and then I have them do a reflection about their name or somebody in their family, and what does that name mean? And then they share that to the class. And the class, I can't tell you how many times I cry in my classes sometimes, because they tell such beautiful stories. Same thing, if you look at the bottom corner here, it talks about inheritance projects. I've presented before at Sunshine TESOL on this, but I have students share something that they've inherited. And it doesn't have to be, we talk a whole lesson about what is inheritance. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's jewelry, but a lot of times it's culture. And what did they inherit as a song? What song reminds them of their family? And they have such beautiful songs to share, beautiful memories. They play the music in class, and it can be in any language, and everybody enjoys it. And they just really, again, it's where they can share something that they're comfortable with. The affective barriers comes down. We can use the trans language in the lyrics, and they can talk about those times. So I think when you make it that personal, where they feel comfortable in sharing their language, it really helps that emotional support. Viktoria, I don't know if you want to touch on any other of these. I know we're getting close to our
Just
time
wanted
here.
to touch base quickly on bilingual books, and then share my experience with using the bilingual books. So I worked in middle school, and the teacher and the class, the students were studying Hunger Games. And then they had 3 newcomers in the classroom, Spanish-speaking students, who were just sitting there and just drawing pictures in their notebooks. So I asked the teacher's permission to allow the students to read the book in Spanish. There are a lot of books that American children are reading. A lot of them are translated into different languages. So when the students were allowed to read the Hunger Games in their language, then we incorporated some vocabulary learning for each chapter, and then they could participate in the discussion. They could understand what the whole idea of Hunger Games was, because they read this book in their language. So this is where translanguaging is very important, to explain the concepts so that the students feel that they're part of this discussion, that they can understand what's going on.
Excellent point. And we're very fortunate of our technology. A lot that can be addressed through closed captioning if you're sharing something out and want everybody to understand. And I always tell my students that you can listen and try to follow along, but a lot of times, even just if they're learning English, they want to see the closed captioning. But it also can help them if they see Spanish or their own native language and kind of make those connections. So there's a lot that can be done there. There's a lot with the dictionaries online and hearing the words, not just reading the words, and a lot that can be adaptive for particular students if you can incorporate technology. Another area that is very big that I like to touch on are the concept maps and artifacts, things that just really are relevant and allow the students to be creative. And where do they go if they want to share an artifact that's important to them? And it can be the story behind it. There's always stories, and I see there's so much storytelling. And if they can think of a story in their, that happened, and are thinking of processing that idea in one language and then delivering it in their native in English, I think that helps them too. And a lot of times if they have to pull vocabulary, I always tell them, this is not, we're very natural people. I make mistakes all the time when I'm speaking. So I'm not looking for, they think when it's presentation time that we have to read perfectly from a script. We're not actors, we're not actresses. So any opportunity that they can just feel natural, and I make it a point to, I had training early on where we had to introduce ourselves in a second language that we had learned. And as I said, I knew English I knew Spanish from high school. So I always tell my students, I'll introduce myself. Yo soy Cristina. Yo soy educatora. And I make these little horrible baby sentences, but I'm like, I feel, your English is so phenomenal compared to my Spanish. And I think that is the part where we start to feel comfortable, that emotional scaffolding, and try to help. And when I'm trying to explain something in a classroom, if the student's not getting it, another student will say, can I explain it in Spanish? Of course, please explain, and let them go. So it's just a very nice community or ecosystem that we have.
Thank you, Christine.
All right. Do we have anybody comments? I see we had a couple of Maria, you said that you like the idea of community and involving the families. That's definitely a good addition to the classroom or outside the classroom. We've got a lot of supports. I think we're kind of at the end here, but if anybody has any questions or comments.
I want to say something about how you made emotional scaffolding strategies a big focus, because we tend to focus more on scaffolding strategies for language, which is, that's all we prepare for and all of that. But it's good to remember the emotional side of things. And I'm really glad that you also presented the positive, the happy, the excited, but also the not so positive side when we're anxious and upset or scared, or any of the other emotional sides of just being a learner or a person. So I'm particularly drawn to this part because I think it needs to be part of the conversation. So thank you for telling us more about that part.
Thank you so much. And I encourage us all to advocate for our students, for the districts that have English-only policies. I think we are the walking proofs. We are the educators who speak multiple languages. We're the walking proof that it is okay to read a book in our native language and get the concepts. And so then we can discuss the book in English with our colleagues, with our students. I read The Hunger Games in Russian when I was teaching it, and it was completely okay for me to read it later in English. So then I understood the concepts better. So I am the living proof of translanguaging, and I encourage you to advocate for our students as well.
Excellent. Well said, Victoria.
I
Well,
wanted to thank you for bringing the terminology emotional scaffolding. I've never heard of that terminology, so I'm very excited to dig deeper and find out more about that term. And I also want to comment that translanguaging, I mean, I've been in the field for 25 years, and I think I've done that in my practice. I've read The Giver in Spanish with my students, made sure they were part of the Socratic seminar circles. And that was the way to help them participate. Just the term translanguaging wasn't being used in the past. That's something we've used in the last 5 or so years. And I just think that it's a great tool. It's one of the many tools as ESOL teachers that we have. But we have to use it intentionally. And that's what I try to tell the staff. It has to be intentional. It can't be like code switching, just, whenever you want to do it. There has to be an intention behind it. And it can happen through books, through speaking, through writing, just many different ways, but it has to be done intentionally. So the kids can benefit from that strategy.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. Great point. And we look forward to seeing you in Florida when you're ready to join us.
Thank you, but I've heard it's not as, I don't know. I hope it's as welcoming as in New York with our services and everything we provide. So I'm a little nervous about that, but looking forward to learning and maybe advocating.
What part of Florida are you moving to?
West Palm Beach.
that's where we are.
Close to us.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm joining from both of us are in Boca Raton.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, just purchased a home about 1.5 years ago in West Palm, and I'm looking to make the move. Just a little nervous, but this is my passion, ENL, and I'm looking to make a difference in Florida now.
Excellent. Well, we'll get your email address and reach out to you, Evelyn.
Thank you very much. I'll put it on the chat.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Well, I think we're at our magic hour. It was a pleasure to spend time talking about something that we are also passionate about, and look forward to seeing some of you either in Tampa or in Florida, or online again at our next meetup.
Yes, and I just put a link in the chat for a brief survey. So if you don't mind just letting us know if you have any topics, ideas for future webinars and all of that, that would really be helpful. I need to give credit to Maria, who's here with us today, for creating the survey. So thank you, Maria. But I also want to say a big thank you to Christine and Victoria for joining us this evening and for sharing this information from this article, and just pointing out the key things that we as educators need to keep in mind when working with English learners. And as Victoria said, it is possible for people to learn multiple languages, even when they are doing things like code switching and using strategies like translanguaging and such. So people do learn new languages and do well all the time. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining us, everybody. Please stay in touch with SSTESOL. We would like it if you are not a member to become a member. And so that way we can continue to communicate and share with you any news about future webinars, hear from you, like if you have any input, ideas, suggestions, we would love that as well. Again, thank you all very much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully see you all in Tampa next month.
Yes.
See you
Come to our
soon.
table.
Yeah.
Right.